Good morning or good afternoon, depending on your time zone. Welcome and thanks for joining us for today's HIS Talk webinar. The title of today's webinar is Advancement in Clinical Efficiency Through Aware Computing, and it's supported by Aventura. I'm Lori from HIS Talk, and I'll be moderating. Attendee phone lines have been muted to prevent background noise. You can use GoToWebinar's questions box in the console to submit questions to our presenters at any time. The presenters will answer your questions during Q&A at the end. Today's webinar is being recorded, so you'll receive a link to the recording as well as a link to the PDF version of the PowerPoint presentation. We have two presenters today. Our first presenter is Scott Raymond. Scott's the Executive Director of Information Services at MemorialCare Health System. And joining Scott will be John. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Scott.
Thanks. So I'd like to kind of give you an idea of the hospital that we're talking about. So Orange Coast Memorial is part of MemorialCare Health System in Southern California. We're a 6-hospital system that spans from LA County all the way down into San Clemente. Orange Coast specifically is a 220-bed not-for-profit community hospital that serves about 5 cities in our catchment area, centrally located in Fountain Valley, near Huntington Beach and Newport Beach, to give you kind of an idea of geographically where we sit. We're talking about Aventura, but specifically I kind of want to let people know, and especially those with an EMR, what problems we encountered with our EMR, and in our optimization, what are we trying to solve using the Aventura product. So the biggest complaints with EMRs, and not specifically to Epic, but EMRs in general, is once you put all the information into a computer system, you're forcing folks to get all their information from one place. So that solves problems because it's one-stop shop, but it also creates a problem that you have to access the same system multiple times a day. And then with the security around EMRs and with HIPAA compliance and protecting patient information, we have all kinds of rules and security to protect that. So every time a clinician logs into the system to see their patient information or to add to that patient record, they have to use a unique username and password, and they have to log on to the system. Kind of the other safety things that we built in is that you have to put in safeguards where if you leave that workstation, the workstation logs off automatically. And when that happens, the clinician's forced to log back into the system, go to that patient, find where they were charting, and continue to chart. So, we put all the information in one place, but we put all these barriers in place to get to that information. So we first started looking at advanced access to the EMR about 10 years ago when we first started our journey on Epic. We wanted our clinicians an easy way to access the applications they needed for their work. And we looked at a single sign-on solution. We piloted it, but it was, at that time, the technology just wasn't there. It was clunky at best, and it didn't add value to the clinician, so we kind of gave up on it. But as we implemented Epic, we always were keeping our eye out for a solution that would allow us easier access and put that information in the clinician's hand easily, but still protecting the record. So we continued to look for solutions, and we came across Aventura. What kind of drew us to Aventura was it was really a different way of looking at access. And essentially, the best way I can describe it is you can take your patient record and basically stick it in your pocket with you and go to another workstation, take it out of your pocket, and look at that information at the point of care. So it really allows you to roam your Epic information from one workstation to another without having to log back into the system and go through all the security and then find your patient record and get back to it. So it really allows them to just tap in access the record, tap out, go someplace else, and tap right back into where they were, right in that workflow, never leaving where they're documenting. So why Aventura?
So this is where we'll transition to John, and I'll play the speaking part of John today. Why Aventura? We developed Aventura for some of the basic reasons that doctors and nurses are frustrated with clinical computing today. Doctors and nurses really never got into healthcare to interact with computers. They got into healthcare to care for patients, to make an impact, to be caregivers and providers, and they now have to contend with computers, electronic medical record, hundreds of passwords, moving all around the hospital, maybe. In clinical computing today, a computer is dependent on the user to tell it what to do. Instead, with Aventura's solution, we tell the computer who the user is, what applications they want to use, potentially even in-depth enough to know which part of the application they want to be in. We can tell them who the patient is and if there are any other peripheral devices they need to use. We can provide that awareness for the user. What happens today in clinical computing is that doctors and nurses have to repeat that same mindless process at every device they approach. Awareness computing changes that model. We'll go to the next slide. One more. Clinician can, by accessing a computer with awareness, can be taken to the right information at the right location, instant, the right workflow. John's going to use some language about the 6 rights of med administration and how that is applicable. And we would probably spend a little bit more time here. I think there's one more bullet to come up. Yep. The 6 rights of clinical computing that he will talk to. And then we'll talk about awareness computing. It's a better way to leverage existing infrastructure, instantly presenting an aware-based desktop to who, what, when, and where, so that physicians aren't thinking about the things that, in forward choice, physicians aren't thinking about the things that are unimportant to them, like interacting with devices. And then this thought we can debate. I was going to send it back to you at this point.
Okay.
I just did a quick video of the technical overview so that people could understand how it works. I'm not sure, Lori, this is an audience question. Are we going to have people who would be interested in a quick video to explain at a very high level the solution, or is that just not even of interest to the audience?
You know, I have no idea until we know who's registering.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm sorry.
So this slide may stay in.
So I would suggest putting it in there just because most people who are readers of ours are technical, but remember we don't want to make this an advertisement for the solution, okay?
Right. Yep.
All right, so I'll just give a brief overview. So the way we've installed the system and the way most EMRs install across healthcare is that you have to have access for the users. And that access comes in the form of desktops, so workstations on the unit, whether they are at the nursing station or in the room. The other way we access the system is what we like to call WOW, so workstations on wheels. So those are mobile carts that you roll in and out of patient rooms. And so we are installed that way. But the problem we have is you're kind of dependent as a user on your location. So if you're taking care of a patient, a lot of nurses access that information to see kind of what is up next for that patient, and then they go down the hall in the patient's room, and then they have to either access a WOW outside the room or access a computer in the room. So what kind of awareness computing allows is, like I said before, you can take your session, your original session you opened, and take it with you into that room. So this video here just kind of shows the infrastructure, kind of the end nodes that you have, and then what's unique about a roaming desktop is you have a virtual desktop that runs on servers, and then Aventura, our awareness computing, sits in the middle. And basically allows the system to know who you are, who you're taking care of, and where you're going to go next. So it gives that awareness to your workflow. So the system, how does it work? Well, like I said, it gives you the ability to access that information without having to go down the kind of the wormhole of accessing the patient information. You get to start your day, access information, and take that information with you everywhere you go. And it really alleviates the frustration on the clinician's point of view, because logging in, finding your patient, going to the next spot where you have to document takes time, and you're doing that over and over and over again. So we did some time and motion studies. Nurses love to do time and motion studies, so we went actually out in the units before we deployed this solution and actually took time to look at the current workflow and to see how many times our clinicians are logging in, how long does that login take, and how long does it take them to get to where they need to go to document. And just accessing the system, it takes 21 seconds to put your credentials in, log in, and get to your patient record. And then our ER physicians who use our radiology product also have to log into the radiology product, and that takes another 10 to 15 seconds. So all that adds up is about 29, almost 30 minutes a shift just logging in and putting in your credentials. So after putting in awareness computing, you essentially can take most of that time out, and it takes a lot less time to get to where you need to go. So 8 seconds to connect to your roaming desktop. It doesn't take you any time to get your patient record because it's already sitting where you left off. The actual cursor is blinking in the field that you were documenting when you tapped out. You can also access other systems rapidly. Like I said, the radiology system just comes up. So we could take at least 20 minutes out of their day just for logging into the computer. So kind of what that equates to is giving time back to the clinician. So in their day, they're logging in, they're entering the room, they're interacting with the patient. So if you can take that 29 minutes out of that just kind of busy work, you can give them 29 minutes back with their patient, which is valuable. So one patient interaction, like I said, when we did our time studies, it's 5 logins at 21 seconds each, and there's multiple clicks to get to where you are. So with a patient-centric workflow, you consider that a nurse cares for 4 patients. They interact 6 times per shift based on acuity, and they access that record 3 to 5 times for each interaction. So that's 120 logins a day with all those clicks, and that's kind of useless time. So we're going to add a slide for docs. We don't have that yet, so we'll make something nice. So the workflow changes. It changes significantly to the user log in at the beginning of their shift. They get their desktop assigned to them. They access all their applications with a single sign-on, and now they get to take that desktop with those applications open with them. So it doesn't matter if they're at the nursing station or at the patient bedside or down the hall, they still get access instantly to their information.
This is just back to John's slide, and this is taking that mindless process out.
So this is John's going to do this.
And the other slide I kept in is this one we presented at Innovation Fund as well, really that it's supporting other healthcare initiatives at the same time. But I don't know if that's too much of a sell.
No, I mean, I think this is the reason to do it, really. I mean, yeah, so we presented this slide before, and it kind of goes to all the things that from an IT perspective, we are trying to solve. The EMR, like I said, solves a lot of problems, but it inherently induces other problems. So workflow and speed are a big factor. Supporting meaningful use, so supporting CPOE, supporting clinical documentation, giving access in real time to patient information, no matter if you're in the hospital or not. All the security aspects with HIPAA and high tech. And then, of course, with the high cost of EMRs, with a multi-hospital system, we're spending upwards of $100 million. We need a way to get this system working as efficiently as possible and getting our clinicians using this system as efficiently as possible. And the only way to take the cost out is to get them to do their jobs better and faster. So the system innovates. That's what we're looking at. That's kind of our marching orders, to innovate and to add value to the system. So innovating in Orange Coast.
I don't know if you want to, I mean, this is really for you and Jared to say all the key planning that you came to at this point. If I was a person watching, I would say, this is fantastic. How did they get there?
Yeah. No, I think this is fine. So to put this system in, just like any other application, you have to plan for it. You have to set up a test environment, and you have to work out all the workflows ahead of time. So one of the big things you have to do is have a VDI infrastructure, so that allows you to roam that desktop. So that's a virtual desktop environment. You have to have governing principles on security, how long you're going to let that session roam, how many times you're going to require the clinicians to authenticate the credentials. Is that 2 hours? Is it 4 hours? Is it 8? You have to decide. You have to get somebody to support this from an executive standpoint and get an executive sponsor. You have to get the clinicians involved and say, here's what we're thinking will help you. Does it help you? Are there changes you'd want to make? Is this a workflow that supports your clinical environment? So the problem really is allowing clinicians to access that patient record in the most efficient way, but still complying with security. And I think awareness computing solves that problem. How much time was that?
That was 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think knowing John in the speaking role, and Catherine, you can validate, but in the speaking role I played, I went pretty fast, and John will probably add an additional 5 to 7 minutes. I think we're probably at 25 minutes, 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm. And that's just about exactly what we want.
Okay.
So then Scott will just turn it back over to me. We'll go through the Q&A. I'm going to stop the recording now for the dry run.